Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. It is Monday, March 29th, and you know what that means. We are officially under a week away until opening day, April 1st, April Fool's Day, is when we get underway with actual regular season baseball. We're going to have a full 162 here again in 2021, and my goodness, I just cannot wait. Last year was such a tease and just such a sham of a season, honestly. I mean, 60 games. Baseball, you fans out there, you guys know. I mean, 60 games, 2 months. Guys will go cold, guys will go hot for 2 months, but the marathon of 162 is what really makes baseball great, and some guys figure it out, some guys won't. I mean, it was too quick. Don't get me wrong. I was super thankful we had baseball and we had anywhere to escape mentally last year over the summer, but I am just so looking forward to 162, the marathon of the season, everybody getting back to normal, everybody playing all their games, and really crowning a true champion this year here in 2021. But we got a fantastic show lined up for you guys here today. Here at the top of the show, I'm going to give you a breakdown and some updates on the injury front. Talk about some other news, notes, some position battles that have been decided here, because as of time of recording here, Sunday night, Sunday, Monday, and into Tuesday, those are the last spring training days. So a lot of roster decisions are going to be made here over the next couple of days, and a lot of them will be made Monday or Sunday evening as teams will start to travel back to their hometowns. They got to figure out which guys are coming with them on the team playing, who's on the roster, who's going to make it. Here in Philadelphia, center field, bench positions, I mean, there's little roster spots all over the league that have yet to be decided here coming down the stretch, as well as some injuries. We've had some new injuries, and I want to give you guys some updates on some other guys across the league, some other teams, so you're ready to go for opening day when it shows up here this Thursday. After that, I'm going to get into a preview of opening day weekend. I'm going to dive into all the series here a little bit, give you guys some predictions on who I think is going to be in the rotations. I mean, we have teams who have yet to name an opening day starter when it comes to, let alone the entire series, and who's going to throw in games 3 or 4 during the weekend. So I did my best to take a guess at you guys, give you some predictions here, give you some stuff to look for, but it should be a lot of fun here, as this is my last show until opening day, because I'll be traveling for work during the week this week. Won't be able to get to show out to you guys on Thursday. That's okay. Not a problem. We'll get you prepared for opening day today, and then I'll talk to you guys again next Monday to see how we did. Check our predictions, check the standings, the schedules, see if anything pans out like we think it will today. So let's jump right into it here. Like I said, injuries. What's going on as we head into the regular season? Well, I put together a little bit of Spark Notes, right? So you millennials out there will know what I'm talking about, or a cheat sheet, if you will, just kind of looking at some of the injuries on the list, team by team. Not every team's dealing with injuries, but most have a couple of guys nicked up. Let's see here. Let's start at the top. The Atlanta Braves right-hander Mike Soroka will start the season on the injured list as he continues to recover from his torn Achilles last August. They're hoping he is not too far away, though, down there in Atlanta. The Braves have come out and said they're hopeful he could join the rotation in the middle to late April. So they anticipate he'll only miss about 2 weeks, 3 weeks of the regular season until ultimately he's ready to go again down there in Atlanta. So it'll be fascinating to see if he comes back, how he feels, if he has the same velocity, the same command, and ultimately if he's able to contribute right away for the Braves. For the Boston Red Sox, obviously, lefty Chris Sale, he's going to be out for the first month, maybe two, coming off a Tommy John surgery that he had last March. So he has hit that 1 year mark, but it usually takes about a full year to recover and then some, depending on, how conservative the approach is, not wanting to rush back too soon. The Red Sox continue to preach patience with Sale and that he may not return until well into the middle of summer. So they're taking their time with Sale. They understand where they're at as a team in the rebuilding process, and they're not looking to rush him back here in April or May. Nathan Eovaldi, he was tabbed as the opening day starter, but he's struggling a little bit here, trying to find his way. And then Eduardo Rodriguez, Erod, he's coming back, and he's been diagnosed with quote-unquote dead arm here in late spring training. And honestly, Rodriguez, he missed all of last year due to COVID. So coming back, experiencing some dead arm certainly makes sense. And for those of you who don't know what dead arm is, it's certainly not a medical term, right? Like I have doctors in my family and I'll tell them, I can't throw a arm. My arm feels dead. And she's like, that's not a thing. That in the medical world, it's not a thing. But anybody who's been a pitcher understands that it's just, you just don't have it, right? Like it's not coming out of your hand the same way. Nothing hurts. You just feel kind of sluggish, kind of slow. You're throwing maybe 90, 91 instead of 93, 94. And again, no pain, no struggles. It's just not there. And I mean, for basketball guys, it's like when you show up and you just can't hit anything, or you feel a little bit sluggish in the morning health-wise. So Erod dealing with some dead arm. You do some stretches, you do some strengthening, you do some band work, and ultimately you try to get it to kind of respawn. But essentially it just means his arm is tired and he needs it to regroup and recoup here for the regular season. Now the Chicago White Sox, you guys know by now, but Eloy Jimenez, he'll miss up to 6 months due to a ruptured pectoral muscle. He was trying to rob a home run during spring training, and obviously the pec muscle went on him. So it's saying, 4 to 6 months here, but 6 would be pretty much the entire season. I mean, that's into September. So they're hoping that he can come back hopefully in August, kind of give them a late push down the stretch. I mean, it's a loss for them because Jimenez has 45 home runs in 177 games. So just over a regular season amount worth of games, he's got 45 home runs, and the White Sox are certainly going to miss that offense. And myself as a fan and somebody who picked them ultimately to win the American League or to have one of the best records in the American League, that's a big blow to those types of predictions here moving forward. So we'll see how the White Sox are able to fill in that gap, and it's going to be a struggle for them there in Chicago. The Cincinnati Reds, Sonny Gray will begin the season on the injured list. He's dealing with back spasms. Looks like he's going to be a week or two behind scheduled, so only a trip to the 10-day IL. He's going to miss 1 or 2 starts or times through the rotation here earlier in the year. Outfielder Shogo Akiyama will also start the season on the injured list. He's dealing with a hamstring, and he could miss a couple of weeks. So the Reds hit pretty hard here by the injury bug early on. The Colorado Rockies second baseman Brandon Rogers, he's expected to miss at least the start of April. Could be a couple of weeks here due to a strained right hamstring that he suffered during spring training. It was, quote, a little bit worse than was originally anticipated. So it's looking like he could be in the 2 to 4 week time frame there in Colorado as their starting second baseman goes down, and a tough start for the Rockies, who are probably in for a long summer anyway out there in Denver. The Houston Astros lefty Framber Valdez, whose finger originally had concerns that he would miss the season, it looks like he's going to be able to avoid surgery, and then he could try to get back here late in the season. They certainly haven't put any timetables on what's going on down there. But again, good news that he won't need surgery down in Houston. Free agent signing Pedro Baez, he's going to miss the opening stretch of the season. He had COVID-19, so he's a little bit behind schedule. And then Justin Verlander, obviously missing the entire year with Tommy John surgery. The New York Mets, they're dealing with some injuries. I mean, goodness gracious, a lot of their newcomers are currently on the shelf. Carlos Carrasco, he recently tore his hamstring, so he won't be back anytime soon. They're looking at possibly mid-May into June for Carrasco, somewhere around Memorial Day. You also have Noah Syndergaard recovering from Tommy John. They put a target date around Memorial Day for him as well. I think that's a bit ambitious when it comes to timelines, so potentially look for the month of June into July, and both of those guys could be quote-unquote, trade assets, right? Like, we didn't make a trade, but we got Carrasco and Syndergaard back, so it's like we did make a trade. I always love those sayings around the trade deadline. And Seth Lugo, a bit of better news. It's looked like he's going to be resuming throwing around opening day. He'll return around mid-May. So you got Lugo, Syndergaard, and Carrasco all looking at May and June return here for the New York Mets. The New York Yankees starting first baseman Luke Voit. He's going to miss the beginning of the season on the injured list because he had an MRI, and that revealed a partial meniscus tear. He's going to undergo surgery and be shut down for 3 weeks and then try to work his way back. They're hoping that by the end of May, potentially June, is looking like Luke Voit, the reigning home run champion for the Yankees in the American League, going to be out until June. That's a tough blow for you fans of the guys in pinstripes up there. Setup pitcher Zach Britton underwent surgery to remove a bone chip and loose bodies. Looks like he's going to miss at least the first half of the season, potentially coming back in July or August to help out the Yankees. And then you got Luis Severino. He had Tommy John surgery last February. Now, he hasn't thrown off a mound yet, but he's working his way up the distance charts and hoping to be back at some point during this summer. Now you have the San Diego Padres. Dinelson Lamet, he's obviously not going to be in the rotation as the year starts. He's taking it slow. He did throw 1 inning in the spring so far. I mean, he's working his way back, right? He received a platelet-rich plasma injection that they hoped helped him avoid surgery and could come back sooner. You also have outfielder Trent Grisham. He's resumed batting practice after missing about a week to 2 with a hamstring injury. Drew Pomeranz also has resumed throwing. He's been waiting for some inflammation to go down. Who knows if they're going to be on the opening day roster? That's still to be determined out there in San Diego, but dealing with some injuries, and of course Clevinger missing the entire season for them out in San Diego. No surprise there. The Seattle Mariners, they signed reliever Ken Giles to a 2-year deal. They know he won't pitch this year. He's got Tommy John surgery, so again, nothing new there, but just getting you up to date. The St. Louis Cardinals, let's see here, had a pair of starting pitchers return after taking about a week or so off. Kwang Hyun Kim and Mike Mikolas have resumed throwing. Kim is believed to have a chance to return in time for the start of the season, and Mikolas, who ultimately missed, he's been ruled out for the start of the season here as well. For St. Louis. So it'll be fascinating to see ultimately takes his place in the rotation to start off the year. The Cardinals, they'll be without righty Dakota Hudson for the season. Tommy John for him. And Haddison Badar will open the regular season on the injured list as well with a sore right forearm there in St. Louis. And then the last couple of guys here, let's see, the Texas Rangers. Jonathan Hernandez, who had a chance to be the closer this season but was shut down in early March. It looks like he's going to miss several months. Although the Rangers are hopeful he'll make a full recovery without needing surgery. He had a sprained UCL ligament in his elbow, and that's the one that tends to require Tommy John. So it'll be fascinating if Hernandez can avoid Tommy John here moving forward. And then outfielder Chris Davis has a grade 2 quad strain, and it looks like he's going to miss about a month. So that will put him back at the end of April, potentially into May. The Toronto Blue Jays, young right-hander Nate Pearson, looks like he's going to begin the season on the injured list after he re-aggravated a groin injury last week. Pearson missed time last year due to a flexor strain, and now he's got a groin injury, so he just can't stay healthy here early on for the Blue Jays, and that's a shame because it's one of their top prospects and one of their top arms. It's going to be fascinating to see if they can stay afloat until hopefully he can get healthy, because he was going to be a big part in that rotation here in 2021. Kirby Yates, we talked about it, going to miss the season after Tommy John surgery. He got a couple of opinions, a second opinion, but it does look like he's going to be shut down. And then finally, the Washington Nationals. Steven Strasburg pitched a simulated game over the weekend here. His first appearance since straining his calf. If he doesn't suffer a setback, looks like he's going to be fine for opening day. And then Will Harris, he's been diagnosed with a blood clot in his arm, so he's going to miss opening day as we move forward here. So a lot of injuries out there, a lot of updates, but some roster battles I just wanted to give you guys an update on here quick is the Twins. They optioned outfielder Alex Kreloff down to the minor leagues. Their top prospect was looking to claim that left field job, but ultimately went 4 for 31 this spring and was able to lock it down. So a couple of guys, you got Jake Cave, Luis Arraez, and Brent Rooker going for that left field spot, and there could be a bit of turnover there early in the season. The Diamondbacks optioned Daniel Varsho to AAA. He could have taken advantage of Cole Calhoun's injury, but only went 6 for 44. So now he's sent down, which means Ketel Marte's spot certainly seems locked in, and then Josh Rojas will be playing for the Diamondbacks as well. And then we have Pablo Sandoval, who's made the opening day roster for the Atlanta Braves. That's right, Kung Fu Panda coming back here, making the Braves roster. They made a flurry of moves, sending guys down, but Sandoval was a non-roster invitee who was able to work his way onto the roster there for the Braves. He spent some time there last year as well, but also his buddy Jason Kipnis did not make the team, and he was released by the Braves and is now a free agent, free to sign elsewhere. So Pablo Sandoval makes it. Jason Kipnis does not. And then for the New York Yankees, Deivi Garcia was optioned to the minors, which means Domingo Germain will be their fifth starter in that rotation. Garcia, he was 0-2 this spring with a 3.86 ERA, 4 runs, 7 hits, 2 walks, so wasn't terrible, but Germain was he was the guy this spring. So the Yankees went that way, and then, of course, Severino hoping to come back here halfway through the season. But that'll do it for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Appreciate you guys listening in. We'll step aside here now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back, we're going to get into our preview of opening weekend. So stick around, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back to the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Can you guys do me a favor? Head over to social media. Check us out. Give us a like. Give us a follow. Subscribe. Whatever it is on whatever platform. But Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Check out both GSMC Baseball as well as GSMC Podcast Network. On Twitter, we'll keep you guys up to date with the latest on everything going on. We give all our opinions, all our takes, not just myself, but all the other hosts within the Baseball Podcast Network. There's a couple of us coming at you now. I believe it is Patrick, Graham, Jack, and myself that will be giving you guys episodes daily, and all of us have access to Facebook and Twitter, so we'll keep you guys updated on our latest takes, what's going on around the league, injuries, updates, all of that good stuff. As again, the regular season's coming at us this Thursday. It'll be fascinating to see here. So I do want to start out with the worst thing that I think baseball does collectively, and it's just one of those things where the more I listen, the more I talk to people, I'm definitely in the majority, but the off day after opening day is the worst thing in baseball. I mean, it's not even close. The Phillies or whoever it is playing Thursday and then having off on Friday and then playing again Saturday, Sunday is the dumbest thing that baseball does. I mean, hey, here's a little bit of tease of opening day, and then the next day, nothing. And I just get upset, and I get frustrated with baseball. And is that what you want from your fans? You want me to get all excited, all stoked for opening day? We're back. We got baseball. This is awesome. Let's go. And then the next day, I'm all pissed off because my team isn't playing now. Baseball, a marathon game, supposed to play every day of the week, and here we are, one day after opening day, whether they win or lose. If they win, I want to see them play again. If they lose, okay, we got to get right back at it. But no, here we are, day 2, off day. And I'm sure the players absolutely hate it, considering they play 162 games in about like 180 days, and one of those off days comes after one game. So not during a 10-day road trip where they may need a break in the middle or a 2-week homestand, but no, you guys have played one game, and now we're going to burn one of your off days because we don't want you getting too tired right from the jump. I mean, I don't understand the concept, and it drives me absolutely nuts that there's only, I think, 5 games on Friday after all 30 teams are playing on opening day this year. First of all, I think that's awesome. I think that's the first time in a while where every team has been playing opening day and not just, okay, hey, majority Thursday, a little bit Friday, but no, everybody's Thursday, and then there's like 4 or 5 games on Friday. And as a baseball fan, I'm just like, this stinks. I'm not a fan of this. Friday, let's go. Give me some action here. But I'm getting nothing from baseball. So if there's one thing they need to change in the next CBA, as well as a ton of other things, but get rid of that off day after opening day, because I know the players hate it because it wastes one of their off days once they're down. Hey, okay, yeah, one day. Oh, yeah, we need to sit down and take a break. So just frustrating from the top here. But let's get into some of the predictions here. Let's preview opening weekend, right? I went around. We got 15 series, which means we'll kind of break it down to 5 series per segment here. I started out with the East Conference or East Divisions, then to Central, then to West, to kind of make things easy to follow here. But the New York Yankees open up with 3 games against the Toronto Blue Jays. These will take place in New York, in the Bronx. Now, the Yankees' rotation was pretty easy to try to figure out. Toronto's rotation is a bit more murky. And like I mentioned, there's out of the 30 teams, I think 27 have named opening day starters. Well, you get to games 2, 3, and 4, and there's 2 teams who have named starters for games 2 and 3. So I went into the depth charts trying to throw together who ultimately I think is going to be in the rotation for opening weekend. There are some injuries, there are some changes, but in New York, it was relatively easy, right? So I think it's going to be Garrett Cole, Corey Kluber, and Jameson Taillon getting the ball the first 3 games. Like we said, then you got Montgomery and Germain behind them in the rotation. On Toronto's side of things, Hyunjin Ryu has been named the opening day starter. Pearson's not going to start, so I have Tanner Roark actually going game 2. And then game 3, you either got Robbie Ray, Steven Matz, Ross Stripling. There's a couple of guys that they could go to by game 3, depending on how the first 2 go. But ultimately, I do think this is advantage New York. I mean, they're playing at home. Yes, they won't have Luke Voit anymore. So what do they do at first base? According to their depth chart, it looks like Jay Bruce is going to play a lot of first base because they're going to obviously keep LeMahieu at second. You got Urshela over at third, Gleyber Torres at shorts, in the outfield, Frazier, Gardner, Bruce in the outfield, Hicks, Judge. I mean, it's just Stanton as the DH. So it looks like Jay Bruce is going to fill in as that first baseman, and obviously their offense continues to be very strong with those names that I read off for you guys. And now in Toronto, I like their offense. Again, their rotation, I don't know what the heck they're going to do, but Danny Jansen, Alejandro Kirk, you got Vlad Jr. over at first. Let's see, Marcus Semien up the middle, Biggio over at third, Bo Bichette at shortstop, Gurriel out in left field, Springer in center, and Hernandez, he's going to miss the start of the year, I believe, due to injury, so we'll see what they do in the outfield, but should be a fascinating series in the AL East there, and like I said, Toronto's kind of my surprise team coming out of the East. I have them winning a wild card spot, so they got to get that rotation right. I mean, Core, Kluber, and Taillon going at it right at the top. It'll be interesting to see how that transfers. So I'll have New York taking 2 out of 3 over Toronto. I think Toronto's offense steals a game from one of those arms, but New York's going to be favored in all 3 of those if you're a gambling style man out there to ultimately win that series and sweep that series. Next on the list in the AL East, we got the Orioles traveling to Boston to take on the Red Sox. And this one's certainly going to be less entertaining than the Yankees and Blue Jays series, just due to pitching, offense. We got some injuries. John Means has been named the opening day starter for the Orioles, but after him, who do they have? Do they have Who's going to go here? Hernandez, we got LeBlanc, Lopez, Matt Harvey potentially going for Baltimore. It's just, I don't even know who's going to be in their rotation. Just taking a wild guess there. And then offensively, Trey Mancini's back at first base. Shout out to Trey Mancini coming back from the health issues he was dealing with. At second base, you got Pat Valakia. Maikel Franco looks to be the guy at third. Freddie Galvis. So you got the old Phillies infield there on the left side for Baltimore. Mountcastle starting out in left field. Santander out in right field. And Boston, on the flip side, Nathan Eovaldi's been named the opening day starter. After him, I got Garrett Richards going, Eduardo Rodriguez dealing with some dead arm. So their rotation certainly leaves a lot to be desired in Boston, but Boston's offense looks a bit more potent with Christian Vasquez behind the dish, Bobby Dow back at first base, Hernandez at second. Obviously, you got Devers over at third, Bogarts at short. Hunter Renfroe, Marlon Gonzalez potentially out in the outfield, Alex Verdugo, J.D. Martinez as the designated hitter. So I think it's advantage Boston here as we get into the offensive style of things. But again, these rotations, look for some high-scoring games. I mean, Means versus Eovaldi going game one. Neither has been very impressive this spring. So I look for Boston to potentially get out to a nice start here early on, get themselves a couple of victories against Baltimore. But Baltimore surprised people last year. I like the way they played the game. They came into Philadelphia, watching them. They played hard. They played aggressive offensively, nothing to lose. They know everybody's picking them to lose. So they figured, what the heck? Let's go all out. Let's try to win some games because, you know, why not, right? We got nothing to lose. Everybody's picking against us against the world mentality there in Baltimore. So it'll be fascinating to see if that transitions here over into 2021 and they're able to kind of rally the troops a little bit when it comes to getting some victories, especially early on in the year while playing some divisional folks. Next and last in the East, we got a bit of a crossover here. We got the Tampa Bay Rays traveling to Miami to take on the Marlins for 3 games this weekend. Tampa Bay, their rotation looks to be a bit set. Now, I don't know the order that ultimately they're going to go in down there at Tampa. They did tab Tyler Glasnow as the opening day starter, but after him, it's up for debate, right? You got Ryan Yarborough, Chris Archer, Rich Hill, and Michael Wacha as the 5 guys who are set in the rotation. I think they're going to go Yarborough, Archer, but it wouldn't surprise me if they throw Rich Hill out there to give Miami a left-handed look here in Game 3 early on. Now the bullpen, Nick Anderson starting the year on the injured list. That's a tough break, but of course they got Diego Castillo, Pete Fairbanks, who's nasty, Trevor Richards, a couple of other guys who are very solid down there in the bullpen. And then offensively, bringing back Mike Zunino behind the dish, Francisco Mejia. He's a solid rotational guy behind the plate down there in Tampa Bay. G-Man Choi at first base, dealing with some day-to-day injuries, but we'll see if he's available opening weekend. If not, they'll have to maneuver a couple of other guys around. They still have Brandon Lowe at second base. He was a front runner for MVP at one point last year. During the regular season, he fell off down the stretch, but again, if he can get hot, he can certainly carry a team. You got Yandy Diaz at third, Joey Wendell potentially over there, Willie Adames at shortstop. He's excellent. He continues to improve. Randy Arozarena out in left field, Kevin Kiermaier out in center, and then you got Manuel Margot out in right field. So designated hitter looks like Austin Meadows or Brent Phillips potentially getting some time in the outfield. So this Tampa Bay team really struggled in spring training, but I do like the way they're set up here moving forward. Now, Miami on the other side, their rotation, I don't know which way they're going to go. Sandy Alcantara, he's been tabbed opening day starter. No issues there. But after him, they haven't said anybody, right? Sixto Sanchez has been late making his spring training debut. So do they go Pablo Lopez and then Hernandez after him? Or does Trevor Rogers get an outing here in the first weekend? So I think it's going to be Glasnow, Alcantara, Yarborough versus Lopez, and then Archer versus Hernandez. And honestly, I think it's advantage Devil Rays here this weekend. I mean, Miami, they're going to go with Alvaro, Aguilar, Chisholm at second base, Anderson at third, Miguel Rojas at shortstop. You got Corey Dickinson in the outfield, Starling Marte, Adam Duvall. And man, it's just Miami, their pitching staff. It is better than you think it is. But still, I got to give the advantage to Tampa Bay, and we'll give them 2 out of 3 here during the opening weekend. Next, we got Atlanta at Philadelphia for 3 games. The Braves coming to town here in Philadelphia. And who are they going to throw at us, right? I mean, looking at this rotation, Max Fried has been tabbed, the opening day guy. He's going against Aaron Nola, game 1. But the Phillies are one of the only teams to say, hey, here's going 1, 2, 3. And that's going to be Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin taking the mound in those first 3 games. So who's going to follow up Fried on the Braves staff? Is it going to be Ian Anderson? We have Drew Smyly, Charlie Morton, Mike Soroka. Again, we talked about in the first segment how he's not quite ready. So Morton, Smyly, and Anderson, a combination of those two, are going to go here for the rest of their rotation. But the offense, Atlanta, remains stacked. D.R. Known, Freddie Freeman, Ozzie Albies, Austin Riley at third base. Pablo Sandoval, we said, made the team. Dansby Swanson, Ozuna out in left, Pache in center, and Acuna out in right. So can Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin, 3 righties in 3 back-to-back days. That's the only tricky part if you're a Phillies fan is, yes, Aaron Nola, he's a little bit more run, a little more movement. He's got a breaking ball changeup. Wheeler's a bit more high fastball, a bit more slider, a bit more power. And then you have Eflin, who's 2-seam down in the zone, sinker guy, get ground balls, get contact. So they are slightly different pitchers from the right side. But again, you're getting relatively the same looks over and over here if you're the Atlanta Braves. So by game 3, going against Zach Eflin, it could be a tall task for Eflin to try to get guys out, especially Freeman, Albies, Swanson, Ozuna, Pache, Acuna. Those guys can hit, man. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the Phillies kind of transition away from 3 righties before the lefty Matt Moore goes, see if they split them up here moving forward. But on the Phillies side of things, like we said, center field really to be determined. You got Real Muto behind the dish, Hoskins at first, Segura at second, Baum at third, Gregorius at short, McCutchen in left, Harper in right, and then in center, Aldubo Herrera certainly looks like he's going to make the team. You got Roman Quinn, Adam Hazley, Scott Kingery pretty much fighting for one spot as Matt Joyce has been tabbed as a bench guy. He's going to make the team, so they got to put him on the 40-man roster. And a few moves left to be made here for the Phillies coming down the stretch. The last one here in the National League East, we got the Mets traveling to Washington for 3 games to take on the Nationals. And this one's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to this series. I mean, the Mets, of course, Jacob deGrom's going to go opening day. He'll be opposed by Max Scherzer. That's one of the best matchups across baseball when it comes to strictly name recognition on what's going on for opening day. That'll be excellent. Next on the list, Marcus Stroman versus Steven Strasburg. Another fantastic matchup pitching-wise. I'm looking forward to watching that one. And then third, we have Tajon Walker because Carrasco's out versus Patrick Corbin. So these 2 rotations, 1, 2, 3, are absolutely loaded. And I think runs are going to be at a premium down in Washington here opening weekend. So the Mets offense, James McCann, new addition behind the plate, Pete Alonso. Hopefully he can return to form. Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis, Francisco Lindor, of course, in addition at shortstop. Dominic Smith, Brandon Nimmo, and Michael Conforto in the outfield. We'll see if this Mets offense, who was recently put together, can really make an adjustment and score some runs for that staff there. And then in Washington, can they score? See, I think they can, but a lot of people aren't as high on the offense. I mean, Yan Gomes, Josh Bell, let's see here, Josh Harrison, Carter Kieboom, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Victor Robles, Juan Soto. I think they're better than the experts think when it comes to the offensive side of the ball there in Washington. So ultimately, I give them a shot. But I think the Mets take 2 out of 3, Atlanta 2 out of 3, the Rays 2 out of 3, Boston 2 out of 3, and the Yankees 2 out of 3. Just because I don't think anybody sweeps here early on, and a lot of teams get off the schneid and don't start 0-6, 0-7. Especially here in the East, because there are a lot of good baseball teams going at it. But that'll do it for the second segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside here now for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the Central Division. So stick around, everyone. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching.
Hey! play.
The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Again, and thanks for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Before we get into segment number 3 here, I will take a second to ask you to please rate and review the podcast wherever you're listening to it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play. I know there's either a like button, subscribe, rate and review. If you're on Apple Podcasts, click that star all the way over there on the right-hand side. That'll give us a 5-star review, as well as write a comment. You guys know, if you've been listening here for the past year or so, that I've been one of the hosts. I'll read the comments on the show. We'll discuss them. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it may be, you guys want some interaction, you want to hear more about, something that is on your mind out there, leave it in the comments. I'll check it out. I'll read it. We'll discuss it. We can kind of interact. I like to make things a community effort here within the GSMC Baseball Podcast. But while you're down there reviewing the podcast and writing your comment, do yourself a favor, check out the other shows within the network. I mean, there's weird news, business, marketing. You got books, movies, other sports. Obviously, March Madness going on, but the NBA trade deadline was just this past week. Kyle Lowry stayed put up in Toronto. The Sixers added George Hill. We got the buyout market cruising out there. LaMarcus Aldridge to the Nets after Blake Griffin. Are the Nets the team to beat in the East? The Lakers out west dealing with some injuries. Can the Clippers overcome with Paul George, Kawhi Leonard? So if you're into other sports, check out those podcasts across the network. Just go to that little search icon, type in GSMC, hit enter, and it'll bring you about 20 different programs within the network that are all fantastic, all excellent hosts, and you guys can kind of navigate to ultimately what your hobbies and interests are. And you'll get some quality content coming at you to a daily basis. So please rate and review. Check out the other shows. But now we're going to jump in here to the Central Divisions. We're going to kind of do a crossover. Now, there are some, Central versus West games here. But ultimately, wanted to kind of keep it as organized as possible for you guys. So starting out with the Cleveland Indians at the Detroit Tigers for 3 games. And this one's going to be kind of an interesting little feel here. I mean, of course, you got Shane Bieber going for the Indians. He'll be opposed by Matthew Boyd on the Tigers side of things. So obviously right away there, game 1, huge advantage to the Indians. But then you get to games 2 and 3. You got Aaron Savali and Zach Plesac looking to be scheduled to go for the Indians. And on the Tigers side of things, this is where the unknown starts to come in here, right? Julio Teheran, he's going to make the rotation after being on a minor league deal. You also have Tariq Skubal, who's going to be in the rotation. It was also said that Casey Mize is going to get his first full look at the big leagues. The former number 1 overall pick in 2018 is finally going to get his first full taste, a full season here. So he has not impressed me based on his stuff and ultimately what's going on. But again, it's spring training, right? So is he working on a cutter? Is he working on a 2-seam that ultimately he's going to disregard when you get to the regular season? From an outside perspective, I'm not so sure. But watching him throw against the Phillies, he just didn't have the command, didn't have the control, was leaving a lot of things center cut, and the Phillies were taking advantage of it. So it'll be fascinating to see if ultimately he's shelving some of those pitches for the regular season and goes to his bread and butter, or ultimately it does look like he's going to struggle here a little bit for the regular season. So certainly advantage Cleveland when it comes to the rotation. Offensively, the Indians, they're going to look to fill the hole of Francisco Lindor. They have Cesar Hernandez back at second base after he won a Gold Glove last year. Solid second baseman. Roberto Perez behind the dish. Jose Ramirez at third base, a perennial MVP candidate. And then at shortstop, is it going to be Ahmed Rosario or Andreas Jimenez? The two guys they got from the Mets, it looks like it's going to be Rosario's job to start. Is he going to be able to hold that down for the entirety of the season? Then you have Eddie Rosario out in left field. So Ahmed Rosario at short, Eddie Rosario out in left, Ben Gamble in center field, Josh Naylor out in right, and then Franmil Reyes here in the designated hitter spot. So Cleveland is a solid ball club. Not as good as they've been in years past, obviously, but still, things could be worse in Cleveland. Now, when you go to Detroit, they're looking to kind of figure things out here offensively. You got Grayson Greiner behind the dish, Jaime Candelario at first base, Jonathan Shoup at second base, Harold Castro at third, Will Castro at short. So you got Castro and Castro there on the left side of the infield. Professional at-bats from Robbie Grossman out in left, Jacoby Jones in center, Victor Reyes out in right, and then, of course, Miguel Cabrera still kicking as the DH there. And we'll see if he's able to bring anything this season or if his decline will continue due to performance, due to age, and what's happening there in Detroit. So this one's going to be the first sweep I'm throwing out there. I just think Boyd, Skubal, and Mize are going to be very overwhelmed from Bieber, Savali, and Plesac, and those guys on the Tigers' rotation side are going to struggle with Jose Ramirez, Franmil Reyes, and Rosario's there on the Cleveland side of things. So look for Cleveland to get out to a hot start if you're out in Ohio and you find yourself being an Indians fan. Next on the list here, we got the Twins at the Brewers for 3 games. Some interleague action. So these Twins guys are going to have to hit. Kenta Maeda is going opening day. He's going against Brandon Woodruff against for the Brew Crew there. Next up, you got Jose Barrios. And ultimately, I think they go J.A. Happ on the Twins side of things for Game 3. They could go Michael Pineda or Randy Dobnak, but I think Happ gets the ball in Game 3. And then on the other side for the Brewers, you got Corbin Burns, most likely a Game 2 starter. And then either Brett Anderson, Josh Lindblom, or Adrian Hauser getting the call in Game 3, as the Brewers have not announced yet exactly which direction they're going to be heading here in the rotation. So Maeda getting the ball over Barrios, I would say controversial if you're Minnesota. Barrios had been the opening day starter the last 2 years, and Maeda coming over from the Dodgers. He was excellent last year, so I like that veteran presence, that stabilizing presence. Really getting the nod there opening day. It allows Barrios to kind of take a breath, go Game 2 after the off day, most likely on Friday, and really just focus on getting the job done and not really have to worry about pitching on opening day. So it allows Barrios to kind of breathe and get things rolling here. Now offensively, the Twins, they are still loaded with the long ball. Let's see here. They got Mitch Garver behind the plate, Miguel Sano at first, Jorge Polanco at second, Josh Donaldson at third, and Andrelton Simmons, the offseason signing there at shortstop. And then in left field, like we said, they sent down Kriolf. So it's going to be Jake Cave, Brent Roker, or Kyle Garlick getting the call, and you may see a couple of those guys throughout the weekend. Byron Buxton, still the guy in center. Max Kepler, the guy out in right field. And then Nelson Cruz, your designated hitter. So Cruz, Donaldson, Sano, Kepler, man, that's a pretty solid lineup. Sprinkle in Andrelton Simmons, who can hit a little bit. Polanco is solid. And this offense is really going to have to lead the way here against the Brew Crew. So it's going to be a tough task for Woodruff, Burns, and Hauser to ultimately hold those guys down the first 3 games. And can the Brewers' offense hit enough to win this series? I mean, they've made some great additions to the offense, but Navarez behind the dish, Hiura at first base, Colton Wong, again, one of the additions at second, Travis Shaw over at third, Arcia still at short. You got Yelich bouncing back out in left, Lorenzo Cain coming back in center, and then Garcia out in right. So can the Brew Crew hit enough, right? Is Christian Yelich going to be able to bounce back and have a big year in 2021, become that perennial MVP candidate once again? You have Lorenzo Cain giving some protection, Colton Wong in the middle of the lineup, Orlando Arcia. So ultimately, I think the Brewers are slightly underrated, but against the Twins, I think this one goes advantage Twins ever so slightly, and I think the Twins take 2 out of 3 as they travel to Milwaukee. Now, the pitchers are going to have to hit for the Twins, so it'll be interesting to watch that take place. But ultimately, that should be fun to watch. The next one on the list is the Texas Rangers at the Kansas City Royals. This one is 3 games here in Kansas City. And can Kansas City carry over what they've done here in the spring? They've been one of the surprise teams thus far in spring training. And Texas comes in a bit banged up. What looks like one of the worst teams in baseball. You got Kyle Gibson going opening day for him. After him, I'm really not sure who's going to be getting the ball. You got Kohei Ariara, Mike Fultonevich, Dade Dunning, Kyle Cody. All options for them. Ariara and Fultonevich look to be the guys in games 2 and 3. But then even offensively for Texas, there's not a lot there beyond Joey Gallo. Jose Trevino behind the dish, Nate Lowe at first, Nick Solak at second, Raccoon Odor at third base. And then shortstop is Isaiah Kinar-Falefa, who came over from the Oakland A's, I believe, in that trade. In the outfield, Chris Davis dealing with an injury. Willie Calhoun could potentially be the DH while he's out. You got Leota Tavares, Joey Gallo, and David Dahl out in the outfield. So Dahl and Gallo, really the only household names there in Texas. And man, it's going to be a long summer for you Rangers fans down there, just looking at that. But the Royals, I had them middle of the pack, over under 73 wins. Where are they going to be? And honestly, it's based on the rotation. I like this team's offense. I like the way that's built. But Brad Keller is going to be going opening day for him. But after them, it looks like Mike Minor's getting the nod game 2. Danny Duffy or Brady Singer in game 3. But all of those guys are relatively young. They're trying to find their way. Duffy's been around. Yes, Minor's been around. But Singer and Keller, new to the scene here. And just it'll be interesting to see if Minor and Duffy can perform at all this summer. Salvador Perez behind the dish, coming off his new contract extension. He looks locked and loaded for another solid year. Back there, they did sign Carlos Santana at first base, coming over from Cleveland. He continues to be an on-base machine. He walks at a high rate, doesn't have a high average, doesn't have a ton of pop, 15, 20, 25 home runs, but solid professional at-bats from Carlos Santana there in Kansas City. Nicky Lopez at second, Alberto Mondesi at short, and then Hunter Dozier at third base, who got the extension as well. They added Andrew Benintendi to the outfield to go alongside Michael Taylor and Whit Merrifield. So this team is very good. Jorge Soler at DH, again, possibly underrated in Kansas City. The offense is very good, but can this rotation get outs? Can the bullpen get outs? Are they going to be able to make moves and get outs? Now, I say yes against the Texas Rangers, but the conversation certainly turns when it's the Indians, the Twins, the White Sox, and they get into that interdivisional matchup here moving forward. But give the Royals the victory here in the series 2-1. I got the Twins 2-1 over the Brewers, and the Indians sweeping the Tigers. The next on the list, we got the White Sox at the Angels. The White Sox, this one's 4 games. So the only 4-game series all happen out on the West Coast. And these are the guys that are going to be playing Friday. Like I said, Thursday opening day, play on Friday. We got the West Coast games to thank for that. And the White Sox rotation, it's going to line up Lucas Giolito, Dallas Keuchel, Lance Lynn, and Dylan Cease for the first 4 games. And on the Angels side of things, less, it's not set yet, right? Dylan Bundy's going opening day. Andrew Heaney's going to go one of the games. It looks like Jose Quintana. But does Shohei Ohtani go one of the 4 games? Or does he wait after Alex Cobb and Griffin Canning? Where is he at in the rotation? Is it 3, 4, 5? Which way do they go? Is it 6? Are they doing a 6-man rotation for the Angels? So this is one of the best opening weekend series in my opinion. I like both of these teams. I'm a big White Sox guy, of course. We talked about the Jimenez injury, which is going to be a tough one for them to overcome here. But the Angels could surprise some people. They got a ton of names in the lineup. If you're looking at the White Sox, Yasmani Grandal, Jose Abreu coming off an MVP season, Nick Madrigal, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson. Out in left field, it looks like Adam Engel's going to be the guy taking over for Eloy Jimenez. But you have Luis Robert going into his second year and Adam Eaton out in right field. Andrew Vaughn being the designated hitter. So this team is loaded in Chicago. You guys know I'm a fan of them for them to overperform this year. But out in Anaheim, a ton of names, right? Matt Stassi, Kurt Suzuki, a nice tandem behind the dish there for them in L.A. Jared Walsh at first base, along with Albert Pujols. Which way do they go? David Fletcher at second, Anthony Rendon at third, Jose Iglesias in addition there at shortstop, Justin Upton still in left, the best player in baseball, Mike Trout in center, Dexter Fowler out in right, and then Ohtani or Pujols DHing, depending on if Pujols is at first base. So the Angels, it's the pitching staff that ultimately they're going to need to step up to be able to compete in this series, because just looking at it, Giolito, Bundy, Keuchel, Heaney, Lynn Quintana, Cease, and Canning, it's advantage White Sox in each of those matchups. So I'm leaning White Sox taking 3 out of 4 from Anaheim here, but I'll be interested to see how Anaheim comes out of the gates and if they can get off to a hot start. The last matchup, transitioning to the National League, we got the Pirates and the Cubs for 3 games. Pittsburgh travels to Chicago. This is a nice start for the Cubbies as they get potentially the worst team in baseball. Let's see. Mitch Keller is going to go opening day for Pittsburgh. He'll be followed by Chad Kuhl and Steven Brault, it looks like. But the rotation is like 7 or 8 names deep on the Pittsburgh side of things. So ultimately there could be some changes into that rotation and who goes when. And then on the Chicago side of things, a bit of a surprise, but Hendricks will go opening day. That's not the surprise. The surprise is Jake Arrieta. Looks like he's going to get the nod in Game 2. He's been solid this spring, but watching him in Philadelphia the last couple of years, oh man, it certainly leaves a lot to be desired. And then I believe Zach Davies will go Game 3 against Pittsburgh. So offensively for the Pirates, they've hit the ball in the spring. How are they going to do it? Are they going to keep it up? We'll see. But Stallings behind the dish. Let's see. First base Moran, second base Frazier, third base Cabrian Hayes. He looks to be the stud again, so watch him play. Kevin Newman at short, Brian Reynolds in the outfield, Anthony Alford and Gregory Polanco round out the lineup for Pittsburgh. Then offensively for the Cubs, they still got their standard cast of crew you guys know out there. They've been there for a handful of years now. Wilson Contreras, Anthony Rizzo, David Bote, Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Jock Peterson, Ian Happ, and Jason Hayward. So can the Cubbies get it done here, or will the rotation let them down here in 2021? So I'll take Cubs 2 out of 3, potentially sweeping Pittsburgh to wrap up the Central Division preview for opening day this weekend. But that'll do it here for segment number 3 of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. We'll step aside one last time here for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up the preview of opening weekend, head out to the West Coast, wrap up the Central, then we're going to head out west. So stick around, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We'll be right back after this.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Hopefully you guys had a fantastic weekend out there, as it is Monday, March 29th, the last show in the month of March. Next time I talk to you guys, we're going to be discussing real, actual baseball, results, what's happening, who surprised, who disappointed, what went on opening weekend. I'm looking forward to that a week from today here as we transition into the month of April. So let's jump right into segment number 4 here. Let's finish up the Central Division, and then we'll transition out west, giving you guys the last of the previews for opening weekend here. The St. Louis Cardinals at the Cincinnati Reds for 3 games in a NL Central matchup. It'll be fascinating to see how the Cardinals fill out their rotation due to Miles Mikolas not being ready. Kwang Hyun Kim certainly looks to be on the fence if he's going to miss some time early on due to some injuries. What's going to happen there? So you got Jack Flaherty going opening day. He'll probably be followed by Adam Wainwright. And then you got Carlos Martinez, Daniel Ponce de Leon, potentially rounding out the final 3 games. Like I said, St. Louis hasn't really made an announcement yet, so I'm not exactly sure ultimately who's going to be going for them. And then on Cincinnati's side of things, we know Sonny Gray is going to miss a couple of times through the rotation. So they'll start with Luis Castillo and his devastating changeup. Ultimately, that one will be fun to watch, Flaherty versus Castillo. But after him, it drops off a little bit if you're Cincinnati. I mean, you got Tyler Mahle, Wade Miley, Jeff Hoffman as potential options for games 2 and 3 here. So I think that's advantage St. Louis. Martinez and Wainwright look to have the advantage on the bump there. Offensively, St. Louis, they had obviously the big piece, Nolan Arenado at third base, but they brought back Yadier Molina at catcher. Paul Goldschmidt still at first base. Tommy Edman is going to take over for Colton Wong there at second base. Arenado, the big addition. Shortstop, Paul DeJean. You got Matt Carpenter backing some guys up here in the infield. Out in the outfield, this is where we'll see who steps up for him, right? And out in left field, you got Tyler O'Neill. In center field, Harrison Bader. Right field, Dylan Carlson. You got Lane Thomas potentially in the mix out there. You got, Austin Dean potentially in the mix in the outfield. So the offense for St. Louis, is it going to be good enough to carry them to the NL Central title? This is the question mark in St. Louis. And like I said, in Milwaukee, adding Colton Wong, Lorenzo Cain up the middle, getting Christian Yelich back, I think that offense is on par with St. Louis. And it may come down to these two teams' rotations and pitching staffs. Can Molina still hit? Can Goldschmidt continue to perform? It'll be fascinating to see. Then on Cincinnati's side of things, man, we'll see how this offense really turns out because Joey Votto, he's on the 10-day injured list right now. Is he going to be ready for opening weekend? That's to be determined. Tucker Barnhart behind the dish. Mike Moustakas looks to be playing second base for him. He's moving over from third base due to Edwino Suarez locking that position down. You got Kyle Farmer at shortstop. These guys were in the shortstop market all offseason and couldn't find anybody to sign with them there in Cincinnati. Shogo Akiyama dealing with some injuries in the outfield. Nick Senzel, Nick Castellanos. Looks like Jesse Winkler will get his chance out there if Akiyama's unable to go. So these are two teams that are kind of middle of the pack when it comes to all of Major League Baseball. I would give a slight advantage to the Cardinals here opening weekend just based on the rotations. And I think the Cardinals take 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati here early on. Now we transition out to the Western divisions. We got the Arizona Diamondbacks traveling to San Diego for 4 games. Another 4-game set out on the West Coast here. And the Diamondbacks haven't listed any rotational pieces. They don't even know who's going opening day as of time of recording here on Sunday. So I'm doing my best guess. I think it'll be Madison Bumgarner. Zach Gallen's dealing with an injury, so we'll skip him through the rotation. You have Morel Kelly, Luke Weaver, Caleb Smith, and Alex Young potentially filling out the final 4 games there. And that's not what you want when you're going against the San Diego Padres. I mean, the Padres, they are pretty much set in the rotation. Yu Darvish has been labeled opening day starter. Blake Snell's going to go game 2 after him. Dinelson Lamet's working his way back, so games 3 and 4 look to be Joe Musgrove and Chris Paddock. All 4 of those guys have electric stuff in San Diego, and potentially getting Musgrove and Paddock versus Luke Weaver and Caleb Smith. Just a huge advantage to the Padres there when it comes to the matchup. Now, the offense for Arizona, not a lot going on there as well. Behind the dish, you got a platoon between Kelly and Stephen Voit. Christian Walker down at first base. Ketel Marte at second. Eduardo Escobar can still play at third. At shortstop, you got Nick Ahmed. Left field, David Peralta. Marte potentially being in the outfield as well. He could play second or center field. Tim LaCastro's the other guy out in center field. And then at second, you got Asdrubal Cabrera, a potential option for Arizona. And then in right, of course, Cole Calhoun's out with an injury. So Josh Rojas seems to be the guy to beat out there in right field. So Arizona, they're looking up at San Diego. I mean, we all know the rotation, the bullpen, Pomeranz, Pagan, Melanson, Hill, Stammen, Adams, Baez. It's just loaded out there in San Diego. And now Austin Nola, he's dealing with a small injury, so he should be good to go. Eric Hosmer, Jake Cronenworth, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., a very, very solid infield. Mixon, Ha-Seong Kim, and Profar at that second base spot. They'll get some at-bats, I'm sure. And then in the outfield, Tommy Pham, you got Trent Grisham and Will Myers. potentially there. So, man, just a loaded team in San Diego, as we all know. Them and L.A., certainly the top two teams in the National League. So I think San Diego is going to sweep Arizona here when it comes to the opening weekend. Speaking of L.A., we got the Dodgers at the Rockies for 4 games. The Dodgers couldn't ask for a better start when it comes to competition. The Rockies down there with the Padres, looking at potentially the worst teams in all of baseball. Clayton Kershaw, although he struggled this spring, he's been tabbed as the opening day starter for the Dodgers. No problem there, obviously, with everything going on. Trevor Bauer will follow him, followed by Walker Buehler, and then Julio Urias will be that 4th starter. The 5th starter coming down to David Price, Dustin May, and Tony Gonsolin. I mean, I'm certainly surprised that they haven't tabbed David Price there with his contract and everything going on. He did opt out last year, so potentially still finding his way, but good problems to have if you're LA. I mean, you got 7 guys who could potentially all be studs in the rotation. I think May goes to the bullpen, Gonsolin potentially to the bullpen, AAA, and Price is your 5th starter, but their first 4 games, they're going Kershaw, Bauer, Buehler, followed by Urias. It's going to be interesting. Left, right, left. They're just loaded on both sides there when it comes to the rotation. Now, from Colorado's side of things, they haven't labeled a starter opening day or thereafter at all. And you pull up their depth chart online, they got like 9 or 10 starting pitchers on the depth chart. So we're just kind of look at the top, assume some of these guys are going to get the nod here in these 4 games. You got Germain Marquis, Kyle Freeland, John Gray, Austin Grombar, Antonio Centella, and Chichi Gonzalez being the top guys on the depth chart for Colorado. But, man, going against that offense in L.A., it's going to be a long weekend if you're a Rockies fan. Will Smith behind the dish, Max Muncy at first base. Let's see, Gavin Lux at second base, third base, Justin Turner's back. Corey Seager still at shortstop. A.J. Pollock, Chris Taylor combination out and left. Cody Bellinger in center and Mookie Betts in right. So if you're a Rockies fan, you're looking at Marquise, Freeland, and Gray going against that lineup. I'm thinking a ton of runs are going to be scored if you're a Dodgers fan. And the Rockies offensively, they got some holes. Ellis Diaz behind the dish, C.J. Cron over at first, Brendan Rodgers at second. Again, it looks like he's going to miss the start of the year, so they'll probably fill in with Chris Owens, Ryan McMahon. McMahon looks to start at third, so it's probably going to be Owens or Hampson potentially there at second. Trevor Story at short. Ramel Tapia out in left. Garrett Hampson out in center field maybe. Sam Hillard in center, moving Hampson into the infield. And then Charlie Blackmon out in right. So it's really Charlie Blackmon and Trevor Story are the mainstays for the Rockies. But look for a sweep out there in L.A. Or in Colorado by the L.A. Dodgers opening weekend. So I think the Padres sweep all 4 against the Diamondbacks, minimum 3 out of 4. The Dodgers sweep all 4, and those 2 are off to the races here in what's going to be the best divisional race and the most fascinating race, because one of them's going to end up in a wild card game, do or die, and maybe that starting pitcher has an off night and they're sent home after 100 regular season wins. It'll just be a fascinating race all of down the stretch. But transitioning now, let's see. Houston at Oakland. The Astros at the A's for 4 games. And the rotation for Houston a bit in flux, obviously with some injuries to Valdez, Verlander. They do have Zach Greinke going opening day. Jaco DeRizzi will go one of the 4 games along with Lance McCullers Jr. And then it looks like Christian Javier will fill out the rotation here early on. On Oakland's side of things, they've tabbed Chris Bassett as the opening day starter, but after that, they haven't given much communication into who else is going to go this weekend. I think you got to go Mike Fiers, Sean Manaea, and Frankie Montas potentially rounding it out. A.J. Puck from the left side. Jesus Luzardo probably should be in that mix there. So a lot of different guys could go for them out in Oakland. They got some options, a bit more depth than they do in Houston. Houston's bullpen leaves a little bit to be desired. Ryan Presley will be the closer out in Houston. But Oakland's bullpen looks solid. Trevor Rosenthal, Sergio Romo, Lou Trevino, Jake Diekman, all late additions outside of Diekman, making that bullpen a solid piece out there at Oakland. So this is a good matchup right out of the jump. These 2 teams should be right at the top of the AL West, and it's going to be very interesting to see which one of them kind of gets that first punch in, right? 10-round, 12-round fight between all the series they'll play this year. Who's going to win round 1? If somebody's going to get punched in the mouth early, are they going to be able to bounce back? Houston's been terrible in spring training, but Houston was also just mediocre in the regular season last year, and they were able to flick that switch come playoff time and make it all the way to the ALCS. And can they do that from spring to regular season? They got a lot of veterans, of course, down in Houston. Maldonado behind the dish, Gurriel at first, Altuve at second, Bregman at third, Correa at short, Brantley in left, Kyle Tucker in right, Miles Straw out in center, and then Yordan Alvarez back to being the designated hitter after coming off an injury-plagued year last year. So a lot of veteran guys who know what they're doing, a lot of guys who have had success, a lot of guys who have been there. Offensively, I like Houston's lineup still. I think if they come to play, they're very, very good. But this rotation, can these kids continue to progress? McCullers got that huge extension, 5 years, $85 million, so they're betting on him moving forward to be solid and be the leader of that staff. It'll be interesting here opening weekend if they're able to travel out to Oakland and get a couple of victories early on, because Oakland's offense may not be as solid, but still very, very good. Sean Murphy behind the dish, Matt Olson at first. You got Chad Pinder at second, Matt Chapman at third. Very, very good. Elvis Andrews playing shortstop after coming over from Texas. And in the outfield, you got Steven Piscotty, Ramon Laureano, and Seth Brown, with Mark Canha being the designated hitter, potentially Mix Moreland matching in there. Tony Kemp in the outfield at all positions as well. So Houston's offense is certainly better than Oakland's, but I think Oakland's pitching staff may be slightly better than Houston's, so it'll be a fascinating 4-game series. But my gut's telling me Houston will take 3 out of 4, but the way they've played this spring, it certainly looks to be advantage A's. And like I said, this is one of the more fascinating series to keep an eye on that could spill over to the rest of the year, and it could be these two teams battling it out for the divisional crown later. And the last series, wrapping things up, we got the San Francisco Giants at the Seattle Mariners for 3 games. Now, these two teams, their rotations aren't set, but it looks like San Francisco is going to go Kevin Gausman opening day. I think Johnny Cueto and Anthony DeScalafani will follow him up when it comes to the rotation. They do have Logan Webb, Alex Wood, and Aaron Sanchez as potential guys to match up. And on Seattle's side of things, they labeled Marco Gonzalez their opening day starter, but after him, have yet to communicate what's going on. I think James Paxton will see, Justice Sheffield potentially, but all 3 lefties may not be the way they want to go. You can mix in a righty, Chris Flexen, Justin Dunn potentially in the rotation just to change things up for the Giants. So it'll be interesting to see both of these teams trying to improve, trying to get better. Offensively for San Francisco, Buster Posey still behind the dish, Brandon Belt at first base, Donovan Solano was fantastic, a huge surprise last year at second. Evan Longoria, Brandon Crawford, so that infield kind of stays the same out there. And then in the outfield, Mike Yastrzemski, Marcio Dubon, Alex Dickerson. Solid team for San Fran, just a matter of if that rotation can play. Offensively for Seattle, Tom Murphy, Evan White, Dylan Moore, Kyle Seager, J.P. Crawford. In the outfield, you got Jake Fraley, Kyle Lewis, Mitch Haniger, and Ty France as the DH, of course, sending down their top prospects and not starting that clock just yet that we all know that was a big deal about a month ago. So give me the Mariners. Again, I like the Mariners to surprise. On paper, certainly it looks like San Fran's the team to beat, but I'll take the Mariners 2 out of 3. I think Houston and the A's, they split 2 games apiece out there. Nobody really wins that first round. Dodgers and Padres sweep. And the Cardinals take 2 out of 3 from the Reds. But that'll do it here for today's episode of the GSMC Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Appreciate you guys listening in. Before I sign off, I'll ask you one last time, check us out on social media. Head to Twitter, head to Facebook, LinkedIn. Check out both GSMC Baseball as well as the GSMC Podcast Network. And then, as always, give us a like, give us a rate, review, 5 stars. That helps us continue to grow here as baseball season is getting underway. And the next time I talk to you guys, we'll have actual baseball to discuss. So, once again, I'm super thankful for you guys listening out there. I appreciate you riding with me here all off season, trying to figure out things to talk about, keep you guys up to date with the latest and greatest. But now the good stuff's about to start. Actual baseball is coming underway here in just a couple of days, and I look forward to talking to you guys all about it here next week at the GSMC Baseball Podcast. So thanks again for listening, everyone. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. I'll talk to you guys again soon.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.